Assalamu alaikum students. Today we will talk about the database of the topic in computer science 2210, and it is one very important topic of paper 2. And this topic actually in the syllabus, as you can see on the screen, that under this topic we have you should be able to know how to define a single table database from a given data storage requirement, choose and specify suitable data types, choose a suitable primary key for a database table, and perform a query by example from given search criteria. So this topic is important in paper 2, and in every year there is one question coming out of it. So today we will see this topic in detail. What is database? Database is actually a collection of data that is stored in a logical and organized manner. Database are often electronic, but they may be paper based, for example a catalog or a telephone directory in an organized manner. So, and the database can also be an electronic database, and when we say it is an electronic database, it means it is created on computer and stored on computer. An electronic database, a program can be used to quickly select the data we require, and nowadays we can have lot of examples through which we can understand, we can see the uses of data. So we have some examples here. Database can be used in number of ways, like patient medical records held at a hospital, like search engines which stores the data about websites and the name of that website, the type of that website, and the little description of that website, so that when you are writing the keyword in the Google, the search engine actually look for that database from where it reaches to that website. It provides you the name of those websites. So the TV program listing contain the TV channels available, the programs they are to show, and their viewing time, the schedule we can get. And the database can be used for telephone directories. That contains the name, address, and telephone numbers of people and business. And if we take the example of school, the databases can be used to store data about the students, and including their names, date of birth, address, gender, class, and so many such things. So this is actually the idea of a database. Now moving toward the structure of the database, I will give you a little more explanation, and we will see little more detail of it. So when we say a database structure is something that actually defines the database, and when we say database structure, one very important point you need to know is the data. First is that what is data? You know, the basic concept of the database structure is to store the data. So it is important that what data you are actually storing in it. And the database structure is actually organized in, we can say it is organized in columns and rows. So we have columns, we have rows. I will draw this here. The database structure is something like this. So in the database structure, we have we arrange the database structure is actually arranged into columns, rows and columns. You can see, so these are the rows, these are the columns, and these are the rows. So we want to store the record of student, let's say student ID, student name, and student age. So the student ID, student name, student age, and little difficult to write with. Okay, so you can see a table. A table is an example of, table can be an example of database. We can call a table as a database. This is the single database. So in this table, you can see these are columns, and these are rows. So what is a table? Table is actually, we can call table is actually if we describe a table, it is actually a collection of rows and columns. Collection of rows and columns. So we can say that a database is something that is organized in columns and rows, and the purpose of this organization is to hold a data. Now this is something, let's say student ID is 112, student name is Ahmed, student name, and the age is, let's say, 16. Now we need to understand few things in this database, in this table. First is the name, first is the organization of the data, and the structure of the database means the data is organized in columns and in rows. And the second thing is the data, and the purpose of this organization is actually to hold the data, and this is actually the data, and this is actually a data. So we are holding data into it, and these are the names of these data. So we also call them, you can say that now this is actually the data will held against a name, a field, and this is called field. The data will be held, the data will held against a name on the top, and that name is actually a field. And so whenever we are in the database, whenever we are entering data, we are actually entering data against a field. So on the top we have the fields. So these are the fields, like the student ID is a field, student name is a field, age is a field. So each field will have one column, like student ID will have this column. So the column is actually, we can say column is a field. So this is a field, whole one column is a field. So this one column is a field, and these names are the field names. Field names are also called attributes. We can also call them as attributes. are also called as attributes. So against these attributes we are filling the data. Now there are different types of data. Like the data can be integer, as you learned in your programming. It can be an integer data. It can be, but here the data type is a little bit different than the data type you studied in programming, and the other type is text. The data can be of various type. Then we can have currency. Data can be of type date, date time, and the data can also be of it can be of yes, no, like we have Boolean. So these are the data types, means which we according to which we will store data. And one thing that is important, we all must take care of it, is that in one field we cannot have data of different types. Okay, so for the student ID, let's say the student ID is declared as type integer or number. If it is number, then it will always input data of type number. So you cannot write like here, you cannot write 4 FOUR. You cannot write like this. This is wrong. So the field will always input the data against according to the type which was initially declared. So we have fields, we have columns. We have field is a column, and then we have row. Okay, now what is row? Row is also called record. So it is a record. It is the information of one item. So we call row as record. Row is record. So record is the detail of one item in a table or in a database, like the information of Ahmed, his ID number, his age. So it is the type of collection of data which is related with Ahmed only. So the record is the information, record is the data of one person, of one item in a database. So now you have seen that in database, or in which is also called a table, we have collection of rows and columns, and the columns are actually the attributes or the fields. The rows are called the record. So when we count the records in a table, we never count the field name. Field name is not a record, because the records are the entries against these field names. So whenever we will be counting the records in a table, we will never count the field name of that table. So this is something that we all need to understand about the database. And the other important aspect which we need to learn is the use of primary key. Now the primary key is something that you all need to understand. When we have many data in this database, we have multiple records in the database. In order to make each record different from the other, we will use one field, one column as a primary key. A primary key means then that column will be declared. When we declare that column as a primary key, each that column will have the characteristic to make each record unique from the other. Like, it is possible that if we take these three fields, like the student ID, student name and age, when we see the student ID, student IDs 112, 113, 114, 115, 116. So we have different numbers in student ID. In the student name we have Ahmed, we have Ali, we have Faisal, Tariq, again Ahmed. So we can have multiple same names in this field. Age, it can be the same. So in order to select a field as or a column as a primary key, we should know that the data in that column or in that field must be unique in each record. So there must be no duplication, there must be no repetition in that data, because if you have unique numbers, if you have different numbers in each record, only then that field can become a primary key, and that primary key will help that whole record different and make it unique from the all other data. So these are the basic key concepts in database structure. Okay, so recalling the things again, the thing which we have discussed. So I told you that the electronic database is basically a digital filing system, and you have seen that the database is actually the collection of field and record. Field are something that is in a vertical direction, and record is something that is in horizontal direction. So we can say that a database is actually a collection of record and field. And the key terms you have seen: the data are raw facts and figures, table, a structure in which data is stored in rows and columns, and record, a collection of data about one single item in a database, and field, one piece of data about an item in a database. And the data, so talking about the data type, as we have seen in the last explanation, that the data type is the type of the data we are entering into the table or into the database. And it is very important that when we are assigning the data type to a field, it must be appropriate to its use. And the type of the data we can assign to each field, these are shown in this table. Like we have text, we have integer, we have real, we have datetime, boolean. And text is hello, integer is 100, real is 1 point, it is fractional, datetime, and boolean is yes, no, and it is something like this. Then after this, in your past paper questions, this is one aspect they usually ask. And like the example, in this example, in this table you can see the student name, date of birth, attempts at test, average score, reset. So these are actually field name, which is shaded in light blue, and these are not the records. The records are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the student name is Peter, date of birth, attempt at test, average score, reset, and this is actually a table. So if by looking at this table, we can also understand the type of the data which is assigned to each field. Like the field name is student name, so we can see the type of the data is text. The field name is date of birth, and the type of data assigned is date and time. The field name is attempt at test, and the type is integer. The field name is average score, and the type is real. Real is actually the floating numbers or the fractional numbers. And reset is actually choice, so we have boolean. So this is something, this is the detail of the data type. And after the data type, we have the primary key. I have given you the explanation of the primary key in my elaboration, which I have given you in my past lesson. So the primary key is actually a table should have a field that will be a unique identifier. As I told you that it must be unique identifier. Identifier means something that will help to identify that record. So you can see the records are in horizontal position, so it is important that each record must be unique or must be uniquely identified from the others. Otherwise two same records can be mixed up and the people or the computer or the program will not be able to recognize or identify it. So if two people in a database have the same name, a unique reference would be a way to tell the record apart. This unique identifier is called primary key. It can also be known as a key field. So you can see in this table student name, date of birth, attempted test, average score, reset. We will add a student ID, and ID is different in each field, in each row. 101, 102, 3, 4, 5. So the student names, it can be same, ME, date of birth can be same, number of tests can be same, average score can be same, and reset option can be same, but the only data which will not be same and which will be unique is the student ID, and this is the key feature of the primary key. That is why we will declare this field as a primary key. We will never declare a record as a primary key. You should always know that the primary key is something that is attached, that is the feature of a field. So in your past papers the question is asked that which field you can declare. They will show you a table and they will ask you that which field has the potential to become a primary key. So this is about the primary key, and this is all about our today's lesson. I'm sure that you have got the initial idea, you have got a clear idea of a database, and in the next lesson we will see the past papers. Thank you very much.